Originally, smart cities was a result of enhancing this sustainable development. So we were talking about sustainable development since the 80s. And then smart cities came as a solution so we could reach our sustainable development goals. However, at the beginning of the smart cities, let's say idea or models, there was a fascination with the technology itself. So we want to implement technology without careful considerations. However, nowadays it's getting a little bit better. So we are getting cities that are more and more aware of that how smartness should affect positively the sustainable development and not the contrary.
Hi, Smart Community friends. In this episode of the Smart Community Podcast, I have a great conversation with Islam Bouzguenda, a lecturer at the University of Twente in the Netherlands. Islam starts by telling us about her background as an architect, her master's in smart cities, specialising in community participation, and her current work at the University of Twente relating to smart city governance. Islam then discusses what a smart community is to her, before telling us a bit more about her PhD and some of the findings from her research and how using conventional tools of participation in communities can work better to serve their needs. Islam then tells us about the sustainability project she has been working on, some of the sustainability tools she has used, some of the topics she lectures, and we discuss the difference between smart governance and traditional governance, as well as the changes Islam has seen since entering the smart city space in 2015. We finish our chat discussing the emerging trends of social intelligence in smart communities. As always, we hope you enjoy listening to this episode as much as we enjoyed making it.
Welcome to the smart community, smart regions, smart towns, and smart cities. It's where we live, work, and play. With smart communities, the future starts today. Big data, smart mobility, emerging trends galore. The Smart Community Podcast is what you're looking for.
Hello, Islam. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Hi, Zoe. Thank you also for the invitation.
I'm really excited to have you. Let's just jump straight in. And can you tell us about your background and what you are passionate about?
Yeah, sure. So I started my career as an architect. So I took my bachelor degree in architecture. And then after that, I worked for a few years in the architecture industry. After that, I felt like I'm not satisfied with what I'm doing, so I want to do more for the society, for the community, etc. So I choose to continue my master studies in smart cities. I found it a really trending and mostly trending topic in that time. It was back in 2015. So then in my master studies, I also specialized in community participation through digital means or technology using ICT, etc. And then through this specialization also, I went into solving some of the social challenges that our society is facing when we are dealing with this ubiquity presence of technology.
Yeah, wow. And so at what stage are you at now in your career? So you've done your master's and what are you up to now?
Yeah, so I finished my PhD. It was back in February last year. And then now I am a lecturer at the University of Twente in the Netherlands. I'm teaching at the Public Administration Department, also basically about subjects related to smart city governance.
Excellent. Yeah, I look forward to diving into that a bit deeper later on. But let's start a bit broad. And can you tell me what a smart community is to you?
Well, maybe when someone says smart community, or it means to a lot of people, they jump directly to its relation to smart cities and technology, etc. But for me, it's more about the social intelligence than the intelligence of the machines or the I don't know, the industry, etc. So I feel that the intelligence of the people, the community itself, the social intelligence mostly, is much more, meaningful than like the intelligence, as I say, into the technologies or the machines, etc.
So thinking more about the insights and the intelligence that the humans bring to the community rather than just thinking about technology.
Yeah, even not just the human brains. What I meant by social intelligence is like how we could, for example, make use of these technologies that are around us to enhance the social, for example, sustainability of the community. How we could enhance the equity in the society, how we could enhance the participation, for example, of the community into our smart cities planning, etc.
So it's thinking more about increasing that social impact, right? The making things more equitable and using, maybe it's technology and data, but obviously a whole bunch of other things that need to fit in. And I think governance is such a huge part of that. Let's go to your PhD. Can you tell us a bit more about what your PhD was in and then some of your findings?
Yeah, sure. So my PhD was basically in the area of how we could use technology to enhance social sustainability, which is a part that it's merely maybe spoken about when we come to sustainable development. So it's like the most part that is taking attention in sustainable development maybe is the environmental sustainability, which is not the same or which is the contrary when it comes to social sustainability. So in my PhD, we were exploring how we could use technology or latest technologies, for example, something like virtual reality or augmented reality, to enhance the participation of the citizens in city planning. So we did an actual experiment with one of the city councils in the Netherlands, in which we implemented, or a real case study, one of the projects that were already planned by the city council in one of the neighborhoods. So we used a virtual reality tool in which we facilitated all the planning through 3D models, and they can see how the neighborhood, for example, will change, etc. And then we see the effect of that, or we explore the effect of that on how the citizens or how that would enhance their participation or willing to participate in the planning of the city. So usually here in the Netherlands, there is a lack of interest in participation within communities. Some of them, they say that no one will be listening to us. Some of it will be related to trust in the government, etc. There is so many factors. So we wanted to explore using such maybe, let's say, attractive tools or technologies will enhance their willing to participate. So the findings were a bit unexpected, let's say. So we found that in some way these tools enhance their interest to participate because they are a little bit attractive, or they are, let's say, fascinating. However, that wouldn't work with communities that, let's say, they are less advantaged or maybe vulnerable communities, because these communities, they have, let's say, they have problems that are bigger than participation or the interest in facilitating technology or etc. They say that, for example, the city council is wasting their money on this facilitating technology. They should take care of our problems more than doing that, etc. So we thought that one of the main findings is the local aspect, or the community's need area, would be more important than like doing technology. So we need to know where to use technology exactly to enhance the participation.
Yeah, that's really interesting. And so it's like if people have their, basic needs or even more than basic needs met, potentially they're interested in then engaging further in, when there's something cool. But actually, if people are not having those basic needs met, then they've got bigger things to worry about potentially, right? Or that's the kind of thinking. And, that's really interesting. And something that I guess we talk a lot about on the podcast is actually meeting the needs of the people with the most at stake, if we don't get this right. So when you were, I guess, looking at that further, was there any indication of, I guess, tools that might work for, communities that are not interested in those kind of bigger, fancier technologies?
Yeah, so we kind of concluded that maybe using conventional tools of participation would work better with these communities. As I say, they were they didn't like the fact that the municipality is wasting money on such kind of tools, and these tools are expensive to implement. So probably working with conventional tools that involve like physical engagement probably would work better with these communities.
So it's like a combination, right? Like you thinking about those different channels, and maybe, the smart approach is that, you have, the analog or the traditional channels, as well as some of these higher tech things, if that's, what you decide that you need. But then maybe the smarts is actually behind it, which is more about linking things together and using the data to make decisions and that type of thing.
Yeah, exactly. So it's more important about you should know where to use technology exactly, with which community, with which social group. So it's about a specific context to each case by itself. And from maybe if I, from that perspective, if I jump to another question for a future research, we are thinking about how we could use, for example, artificial intelligence to explore. For example, we have certain characteristics of communities, of social groups. So how could, for example, machine learning help us to explore, with this community, you have to use this and this and this. With these communities that has a certain, for example, characteristics, you have to use this and this and this. So this is one of the future also research projects we are working on.
Yeah, that's really interesting. And I guess as you build the model or build, the machine learning model, that you can gather more and more data and then feed that in to make it more and more accurate. I imagine though there may be, there obviously has to be the human in the loop as well, because, you're dealing with humans. It's not going to be necessarily, this community has this and this, so this will work. It'll be, this is suggested, right?
It could be a sort of help, but we cannot depend on it 100%.
And it kind of goes back to your point earlier where, people are thinking, there might be this tech that really helps us, but actually we need to marry that in with the traditional approaches and the things that we know that work, right?
Yeah.
So tell us about some of the other projects and things that you've been working on since or recently.
So apart from this, also in Oman, it's mostly related to more of sustainability and sustainability rating tools. So we had also a sort of research project where we explore the community understanding of sustainability and how we could integrate that to create a sustainability rating tool that are specific to the Omani context. So as many knows, there is sustainability rating tools that are the British, BRIME, I think, and there is other international sustainability rating tools, but there is not a one that is specific to the like Omani context. Yeah, so this was my last research project that I worked for. And as I mentioned before, also there is plans for working on the machine learning and artificial research project, in the near future.
Yeah, cool. So what are some of the, I guess, the differences in the tool that you were looking at compared to the ones that, are used in different other areas?
You mean the sustainability rating tools?
Yeah.
Yeah, so maybe the basic difference between the other tools and the one that are for Oman is the social aspect. So the cultural differences between like the West and the East or the Middle East there is a difference in that. So we were looking into that, how the Middle Eastern communities are looking into sustainability, how it is advancing in these communities, so we could integrate that into the sustainability rating tool.
So looking at the cultural differences and the context and everything.
Maybe we were mostly focusing on the building sustainability. So even in designing the buildings, for example, in Europe or the Americas or Australias, there is a cultural effect on designing these buildings, for example, than when you design for a Middle Eastern family. So these are one of the aspects that we were taking into consideration.
Yeah, that's really interesting, and I guess a really important factor when we are looking at improving the sustainability. We need to then take this into consideration. A sustainable or a smart building or whatever won't necessarily look the same, but we're trying to achieve the same outcome, but actually the components that are in there will be different based on the needs of the community that's using it, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, cool. So you're doing lecturing now, and you're talking about governance, which is one of my favorite things. So can you give us a little bit of insight into some of the things that you're, talking about or teaching your students when it comes to smart city and smart community governance?
Yeah, so basically there is the basic governance theory, where we talk about differences in governance, types of governance, etc. And then there is the relation between governance and the smart cities and the smart governance part, and how should governance deal with the challenge of technology and society, and also how we should govern let's say cyber societies, what are the challenges, etc. Yeah, these are more or less are the subjects.
And I guess there's obviously traditional governance in all organizations, government projects, all those type of things. What is it about smart governance that is different, or things that we need to consider when compared with, say, traditional projects and governance?
Yeah, so when we apply smart governance, it's mostly that the part of technology in governance. So one of the issues, for example, governance is dealing with is the planners, or for example, these civil servants that are working for the government, the digital literacy between them. So we need, governance or governments need to work on this part, because you cannot still, govern a smart society when your city servants are not that much familiar with technology, etc. So this is one of the issues. And this was also one of the previous research I did, also exploring the maturity of governments when it comes with shifting to a smart governance. So digital literacy between the civil servants, was an issue. Also, the acceptance of using technology, like many of the civil servants, they prefer the like traditional way of working. So yeah, it's about like jumping or stepping up into smart cities, and it needs a big change within the traditional governments.
And in your research, did you look at different governance models around the world? Is that how you went about looking at what elements are needed within the smart city governance?
Well, it was not about like comparing different governments. It was like about studying like a specific case study deeply, in which we interviewed several civil servants. What's their opinions about the smart cities, etc., how they are dealing with this technology ubiquity, how they are dealing with the societies, what challenges they are facing, etc.
Yeah, cool. Now, you've been in this space, for quite a while, so since 2015. When you first started in this space, obviously there was a certain, like you were talking about, trending and certain things where people were talking about. What's some of the biggest changes you've seen since, 2015? Now we're in 2021. Have you seen a maturity in the conversations, the maturity increasing, or what are some of those big changes that you've seen?
Well, maybe there is a little bit more awareness about the different aspects of smart cities. Like originally, smart cities was a result of enhancing this sustainable development. So we were talking about sustainable development since the 80s, and then smart cities came as a solution so we could reach our sustainable development goals. However, at the beginning of the smart cities, like let's say idea or models, there was a fascination with the technology itself. So we want to implement technology without careful considerations. However, nowadays it's getting a little bit better. So we are getting like that cities, they are more and more aware of that how smartness should affect like positively the sustainable development and not the contrary.
Yeah. And okay, let's zoom to the future now. What do you think the emerging trends are that people aren't talking about enough?
So it's mostly maybe the one of the things that people usually forget to talk about, like a socially sustainable smart city. So as I mentioned before, social intelligence also is a topic that is not much being talking about when it comes to smart city circles. So we are like affecting negatively the social sustainability of the smart cities without not intentionally, I mean. So this is some of the topics that people that are not that much discussing, or they are maybe not much aware of when it comes to smart cities or smart communities.
Yeah, so really thinking about the impacts that I guess technology can have, but I guess what you're saying more is like not focusing on this technology per se, but how we can affect communities and, in a positive way, but also realizing and understanding that there will be, or there's unintentional consequences as well, and talking more about that, right?
Exactly.
Yeah, I think it's a really important one because we often talk about, the newest trend in technology, which is all, very interesting. But I think talking more about what those implications can be.
Yeah, the consequences, exactly.
And like you said, unintended as well. We can have the best, intentions, but I guess if we don't, listen to the community and choose the right technology and the tools for solving those pain points or those problems, like you were talking about earlier with, that one solution actually worked really well for one community, but actually it was a negative impact on another community. Starting to talk about those things as well, that when we're talking about solutions, it really is a unique solution for that particular community.
Yeah, exactly.
And then also, like you were talking about earlier as well, even using then technology, machine learning, artificial intelligence to actually then help us select those tools as well, which is kind of like embedding that in further to solve this problem that we have, that we might have even created ourselves, right?
Yes.
Yes. Yeah. Kind of going full circle, but then going, okay, well, maybe technology can actually help us to get out of this as well. But then also, like you were talking about, the human element too. So making sure that it's a tool, it's not going to solve our problems. We still need that human brain and that human connection and even like the human touch, I guess, in this whole thing, because that's what humans want to connect with, right?
Yeah, exactly. So it's like when you say it's like a closed circle, so we are like still into technology and technology again. But we try to emphasize like the human side of it.
Mm. I'm curious to know, like, you've got students now that are learning about smart cities. I guess when we first went to university, it wasn't really an option to do that, like bring all these things together. What type of students do you get through a smart cities course? What backgrounds do they have? Is it planning, engineering, or what type of students are coming through?
So my students, they are basically still bachelor students. They are specializing in management, technology, and society. So they are basically like into management, let's say, more than engineering or scientific background.
Yeah, okay. Interesting. So your course is part of a bachelor of, say management or information technology and that type of thing.
Yes.
Yeah, and bringing that together with the civic side.
Yeah, like society and the relation between society, technology, and the management of the city.
Yeah, cool. Well, it's been so great to have you on the podcast, Islam. I've had such a great time, and thank you for sharing all your knowledge. I think we should have another conversation soon. I think you're going to have, such an interesting time, in the Netherlands and thinking about or, interacting with students. And I'm really keen to hear, like, what are the questions they're asking? What are the problems that they want to see solved? And then, kind of moving into like the different research and things you've been doing. So, thank you so much for coming onto the podcast.
Yeah, thank you for the invitation.
No problem. Now, I just have one last question, which is, how can people connect with you?
So I'm available mostly on LinkedIn. I think you will share my page.
Yep, we can.
I have also a Twitter account, but I'm not that much active on Twitter. But mostly you can find me on LinkedIn.
No worries. We'll put all the links in the show notes so people can click away and find you. Thank you again for joining me on the podcast, and I look forward to our next conversation.
Thank you very much, Zoe. Looking forward to it also.
Have a great day, and we'll talk soon.
Okay, bye-bye.
Bye.
Are you looking for an engaging speaker, MC, or facilitator for your next big event? Then we've got you covered. Zoe is a go-to speaker, MC, and conversation facilitator with a difference. She's a master at simplifying the complex and making connections you might never see. Book Zoe for your next event. Email hello@mysmart.community or head over to her speaker page, www.mysmart.community/speaking.
Thanks so much for listening to the Smart Community Podcast. Show notes for this episode and all other episodes are available on our website, mysmart.community/podcast. If you have any questions for us or any of our guests, you can email hello@mysmart.community. You can also find us on the socials. We are on LinkedIn and Twitter @SmartComHQ. That's com with 2 M's. If you are enjoying the podcast, please hit subscribe so you never miss an episode. And we would love for you to leave us a rating and review at wherever you listen. This really helps us reach more ears and eyes, so thank you for your support. as always, we hope you enjoyed listening to this episode as much as we enjoyed making it.
The Smart Community Podcast is what you're looking for.